have a little inspiration to send you into your weekend. Words meant to motivate and inspire, maybe even challenge, and all just a click away on your laptop or your smartphone. Here's a sample of what I'm talking about.
Dangerously, our children. Let me tell you what we think about children. They're hardwired for struggle when they get here. When you hold those perfect little babies in your hand, our job is not to say, look at her, she's perfect. My job is just to keep her perfect, make sure she makes the tennis team by 5th grade and Yale by 7th grade. That's not our job. Our job is to look and say, you know what? You're imperfect and you're wired for struggle, but you are worthy of love and belonging.
That is Brené Brown, a researcher and social worker who studies human connection and vulnerability and shares how her research has, quote, changed the way she lives, works, and parents. Well, it's just one of the many TED Talks my next guest says are a must-watch for all women. A list she says will inspire you to be the best, most successful version of yourself that you can be. Corporate recruiter Carly Hazen is joining me with her top TED Talk picks. It's so good to see you.
You too.
So TED Talk's sort of the busy mom's way to catch up, be relevant, be inspired. What was your criteria for these must-watch TED Talks?
Well, first of all, on that note, tops 15 to 19 minutes. So they're all very, very quick. Great way to just get kind of just a nugget of information for the day. But my criterion, obviously I looked at YouTube views. So most of these are in the high millions. And I looked at a lot of national lists for top 20 TED Talks. But the ones that really spoke to me were the storytellers, the ones that made a personal connection. You could visibly see that they were moved by something or they had a really great story that really just I found moving. And Brené Brown that we just saw has kind of an issue with being called a storyteller because she's a researcher and she discusses that. But she says that she decided that stories are just data with a soul. So I think rather than being laden with facts and figures and data, it's someone that makes a soulful connection to you and you go, you know what, that actually inspires me to be better, or I'm going to change something immediately.
I like that. Her talk titled The Power of Vulnerability. In a nutshell, what will women take away from this?
I think a belief that what makes you vulnerable makes you beautiful. And she talked a lot about how we like to numb vulnerability because it's so uncomfortable. And my husband's a mental health therapist, so Brené Brown is renowned in that industry. And you're taught as a social worker to lean into the uncomfortable, and that's so uncomfortable. I mean, she talks about being vulnerable, and you think, well, I can be vulnerable, and then she gives you a few specific examples, like waiting for the doctor to call after a concerning appointment, showing up at the park to pick up your kids and you don't see them. Vulnerability is not comfortable.
And it's all around us.
And we numb it, which is why we're the most in-debt, obese, addicted, medicated adult group in U.S. history, because it's very uncomfortable. Or on my end, which I can see, you perfect it. You know, if you don't numb it, then you tend to perfect it and just go, oh, I'll just have control where I can control things, and I'll just fix it and tie it up in a bow, and we're all going to be perfect.
Everyone's good. Everyone's fine here.
I like those clean vacuum lines. It just makes me feel like I've got some control over life, right?
Yes.
So she talks a lot about our drive to do that and how if we would just lean into it and just realize that this is part of the human experience and it's beautiful and that people really respond to vulnerability, it's a changing topic. It's a life changer.
The Power of Vulnerability by Brené Brown. TED Talk #1 that made Carly's list and now ours. TED Talk #2, How Great Leaders Inspire Action. You really like this one as well.
This was probably the first TED Talk that I ever saw, and I went, I get it, like, whoa, mind blown. This is life-changing for me, especially in work, because he uses Apple and Microsoft and a lot of really great examples, and he outlines what he calls the golden circle, which starts with your why and at the center, and then it moves to the how, and then it moves to the what. He says, you know, every company on the tertiary knows what they do. They also know how they do it. So we make great cars, and how we do it is with lean manufacturing and with leather seats and all of that. But he says that so many people don't know why. Why are we doing it? Why do you get out of bed in the morning, and why should anyone care?
And that's at the center of every task.
That's at the center of everything.
CEOs to CEO moms.
Exactly. He said, so we go from the outside in because it's the clearest, and then we move into the fuzziest, and it's so hard for people to actually define why they do what they do. Is it a deep love? Is it to enhance customer experience? Is it because they love to solve problems? And I connected to that greatly in my profession because a lot of companies don't know why they're hiring. They know they need a CFO. They know they need someone to answer the phones. But why? Why? And when you look for a job, why? Right? It's so having a why-driven resume and having a why-driven interview conversation really is completely different.
I'm excited to watch that one.
And it makes you ask better questions in life. Why am I doing this? Why am I participating in this activity? Why do I feel the need to go to this? And once you tap into that, everything kind of moves outward from there.
It opens up a new purpose, I would imagine.
Absolutely.
All right, your next pick makes a powerful, sometimes humorous case for an education system that values creativity as much as it does literacy. We have a short clip here from Sir Ken Robinson's Do Schools Kill Creativity? Let's take a look.
I love this.
I had a great story recently, I love telling it, of a little girl who was in a drawing lesson. She was 6 and she was at the back drawing, and the teacher said this little girl hardly ever paid attention. And in this drawing lesson she did. And the teacher was fascinated. She went over to her and she said, "What are you drawing?" And the girl said, "I'm drawing a picture of God." And the teacher said, "But nobody knows what God looks like." And the girl said, "They will in a minute."
You know what? I've heard that story told out of the context of this speech, and I love it. I love it
too. I love it.
What can we learn from this?
First of all, he's highly entertaining. His British accent makes everything funnier, and he's just got that witty, kind of caustic way of looking at things. But he talks about how our academic ability has really come to dominate our view of intelligence, and it's the truth. You look at the college systems, and you look at the way our kids are educated, and it's so heavily weighted to STEM education and science and math and technology, which is hugely important, and I can tell from a recruiting standpoint. But what's also missing is a huge lack of creative ability, creative capacity to challenge the status quo and think outside the box. I mean, if I had $1 for every time I heard a company say that those are intrinsic characteristics that they're looking for. But the problem is that you don't grow into creativity, you grow out of it. We're born very creative beings, and a lot of people benignly are steered away from things that they love in school, and he talks at great length about that.
And you see those skills missing in the recruiters.
And people say, you know, don't do music, you're never going to be a musician. Don't study art, you're not going to be an artist. Study this, study this. So everything's heavily weighted to a career. And then you get to your career and you realize all of these different creative elements and the ability to really challenge the status quo. That's a learned trait, and it's fostered through creative ability. So he talks at length about how, you know, our task is to see creative capacities for the richness that they are and see our children for the hope that they are. And it makes you want to parent differently.
All right, we've got time for just to talk about one more, and then we'll give people your wrap-up list. But we should end on Sheryl Sandberg. We've heard a lot about the Facebook COO's philosophy, and this talk, why we have so few women leaders, really resonated with you as well.
Yes, and it probably always will, because I think women will always face harder choices between professional success and personal fulfillment than men. And the key too that data shows that is heartbreaking, I feel, is that success and likability, the data shows, are positively correlated for men, and success and likability are still negatively correlated for women. And until that changes, I think it's going to be really hard for women to be motivated to reach those upper echelons of success, because I think that's kind of at the heart of what really breaks it for a lot of women. And the family situation, absolutely. But I will tell you that, especially here in Utah, hear me loud and clear, companies want more women at the executive table. Men want more women at the executive table. It's not for lack of wanting. They feel that their numbers are dwindling. They have a huge want for that diversity. Those pickings are slim. There's just not a lot of women out there available that are skilled and talented and have stayed long enough in the workforce to really reach those executive levels. So please stay and, you know, stay working. And there's a lot of companies that really help figure that out in terms of flexibility. And she talks about how don't sign out before it's time to sign out. Even if you know that you want a baby, don't start leaning out just because you know that you want to have a family in the future. Sure. Stay with it, and then when you get there, then cross that bridge. And chances are your company will work with you.
Just because knowing companies are more flexible and able to work with moms, I think, is really
and you are valuable to that company. You're huge, so stay with it.
We'll round out this very valuable list by referring you to The Power of Introverts by Susan Cain. I wish we had time to talk about it, but it definitely made your list. Yeah. Thank you so much. This was super inspiring. Sure. We'll post all of these talks on our website for you. Look at studio5.ksl.com for the complete TED Talk list recommendation.